microphone. Looks like the batteries just went out, so that's okay. I'm going to project myself, and if I get somebody to come and give me batteries before we're done, you'll be able to maybe project a little bit better. I'm Darah Bonham. I'm principal at Albemarle High School. I'm going to welcome you to our back-to-school night. This is always an exciting event for me and hopefully for you. We haven't had this in several years because obviously of the pandemic, but getting a chance to have in-person conversations and a chance for you to meet your teachers and your child's teachers, I think is a very important part of our return to school and really the excitement of being back in school. How many of you are first-time parents through Albemarle High School? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. Anybody here go to Albemarle High School? All right. So there's a lot of history to Albemarle High School. This is my 4th year as principal here. I've actually bounced around to all the comprehensive schools, not purposefully, but it just happened to be my trajectory when I moved down here about 17 years ago from Fairfax. And I'm at a really great place. I really enjoy the school. I love the kids. It's just a great ball of energy every single day in this building. It's very exciting to be here, and I'm really excited about this year in terms of where we've been and where we're going and the opportunities we have for your children. And it's been a really wonderful start to the school year. We really appreciate some of the changes we've made and some structures we put in and just how all that has gone super smooth as we start back into a new school year. So I tend to babble sometimes, so I'm going to try to stay on script because I want to make sure you get a chance to follow the schedule that I gave to you in the Weekly Connect so you get a chance to see all your child's people. So I'm going to go through and just highlight some things. All of this is actually, thanks to one of our students here who's filming, will be put on our YouTube channel and put on the webpage. I'll also share the slides and some of the data that I'll represent here today. But really, back to school night is a chance for you to get into the classroom, briefly hear from your child's teachers, a little bit about what their expectations, who they are, maybe put a face with the name that your child has talked about when they come home on a given day. And then my goal really in this short time I have with you is just to share a little bit about Albemarle High School. Some of it's data rich in terms of where we've been, but the idea is to talk about also where we're going moving forward. So, hopefully this will work from down here. Tonight we'll talk a little bit about just the kind of strategic plan and vision of the county, some staff information, some demographic data, and some school info, and then a little bit about the charge as to where we're headed moving forward. May have to go live. Here we go. So, county, this is division-wide, portrait of the learner, some of those main qualities and characteristics that we want our learners to experience as they go through high school. This is a part of what they'll experience in their 4 years. I won't go into an elaborate description of those. And then also to, what is the core of our division in terms of our vision, our mission, our strategic plan. And I think, while these are words that are put out, they're reminded of us at all our leadership meetings, remind us at the staff meetings about really the core values of who we are and what we strive to do as a division and how we want to make sure that we're replicating those types of things each and every day within our classrooms. So a little bit about just staff information. We did a retreat at the beginning of the year where all our staff came back. And we had a superhero theme because I think, as you well know, going through virtual learning and the pandemic and all that took place, our teachers are superheroes. Our staff are. They really do go way out of the way to make sure they create great opportunities for our students. They're more than just teachers, right? They're educators, they're counselors. They really do a lot for us. And we have quite a large representation of staff members here. As you can tell, we have close to 150 teachers within the building. Our teaching assistants, about 32, clerical. You see our counseling support that's there. We had just over 30 new teachers for this year. Right? It's a large number of teachers coming in new. And overall, it's about 250 staff members on a given day. So you can just think about the parking lot being filled just by a lot of cars with our staff. But I liken Albemarle High School to a small city with just under 2,000 students, over 200 and some staff members. Each and every day you're coming to a neat little community. It's a large community, but it's certainly unique to our area. Some of the information I will talk about, and this is something you can find yourself, it's the quality profile that the Virginia Department of Education puts out. A lot of this is related to SOL scores, which are obviously the standard upon which students have their verified credits to graduate with. This is information you can find from data over the last X number of years. I will say that, from the pre-pandemic time period, right, you had some baseline scores, and then the 2 years where we went through virtual learning, and the school year ended up ending early. It's been a bit of a rocky road, right, in terms of even counting the SOLs or not, and how many students took them. So last year was our first stab at kind of getting back to some of those standard expectations with end-of-the-course assessments. All that information will be found here. There's also information in relation to attendance and other qualities that we happen to have. One of the things that I will say as we go through data, and if you don't know me very well, I am super transparent. I am very open about where we are as a school and where we are moving forward. And I don't think anybody would attest that the last 2 years was easy, right? It wasn't easy for anybody. It wasn't easy for all of us to navigate, whether it was virtual, whether it was hybrid, whether it was coming back in person last year. And I say this because last year, I told my staff at the beginning of the year that this time last year, or right when we started school, we were just happy that kids showed up. I mean, to be honest with you, we were coming out of a pandemic. We were just glad we had kids in person, but we had a lot of grace and flexibility that we provided students. And I think that was worthy, that was necessary, right? Because we had a lot of challenging situations in families and homes about what that meant. And some of that manifested itself into a year, which was really a year of just trying to figure out how to manage to get back to what would seem to be normalcy. And some of those things that we realized, right, as we've gone through it, was things such as deadlines, things such as more structure, things such as attendance. All those factors were they weren't arbitrary, right, but they were ones that we wanted kids to come back in. We knew the deadlines were tough when we went through the virtual world in terms of turning stuff in. And then as we've learned through all of that, we really helped create those structures for this year. So as we go through and look at data, right, we don't look at data that we're super proud of necessarily across the board, because we know we have work to do, but we know we endured one of the most difficult years probably in public education than probably anyone can name, right? So when you look, this is what we put together, which I think is well, let me talk about demographics first of all. You can see that this is our breakdown of grade level, all right? This is different nationalities and races that we happen to have. Here's a unique statistic for us, which is pretty exciting, is for the first time since 1954, we are a majority minority school, which shows the representation of the diversity that we have and the richness in that over the course of the last few years in terms of our changing demographics. You can see some of that represented here, and within that you can see really some of what that looks like in terms of just different nationalities, different families coming in, different language backgrounds, different cultures, different experiences, and I think that's a great thing for us. I think that gives us the richness of what the world's about, and that exposure and a chance to learn from each other as we happen to continue to work forward as a school. So the data itself is put together. I think it's my next slide, if I can get this to work. There we go. So this is what we call an equity dashboard. The equity dashboard looks at the lens of certain characteristics or criteria through different backgrounds, races, different types of ways in which you can analyze what it looks like in terms of how our students are being successful or not. And the things that we look at across the board, a lot of times you break these out into individual components. We put them all together. And so we looked at graduation percentages, we looked at attendance, and we looked at all of the SOLs that you'll see all the way from English and reading SOL all the way to biology, okay? Then you can look across and see that there's some other survey data, right, that looks at things called Gallup polls, panorama data survey. These are some of the things that you'll see I put out that we survey students on, we survey staff on about how things are going for them as a school or as a student. And those are things such as sense of belonging, rigorous expectations, what school climate, things like that look like. Now this is all last year's data, right? You know, as I mentioned, kind of going through a rough road, trying to get back to being in a school building, trying to get back to structure, trying to get back to a sense of what it was like being away for, in that case, close to 15 months. And we've got some work to do, right? And I can say that as a principal that we have some areas within our SOL scores, within our graduation rates, and with other areas here that we need to continue to work on. And those areas we need to work on really is a very calculated process for us moving forward this year that we know we'll be able to support and tackle. So I'm not going to go through each one of these categories. I'll provide these for you later. But some of the things that I want to talk about is like that third from last column of a sense of belonging. To me, that's a big one as a principal. I want every student that comes in our building to feel like this is a part of their home. This is their home away from home. This is where they spend 7.25 hours, right? Now I realize this is survey data, and some kids don't take a lot of interest in doing, filling the survey out like you would want, but it does give a little bit of a blink to perhaps some of how our students were feeling through the course of a year, just trying to get back into school. And we need to continue to work on. What does that look like in the classroom? How do you hear voice and agency from our students? How do you get to a point where this school feels like it's their school, as well as a chance for them to thrive in the things they do, not just academically, but also extracurricular-wise and beyond. So these are areas that we look at as far as data points, because we want data to drive decisions as to where we go, to figure out where are we going as a school. So let's talk about that for a second. Some of our school improvement plan overviews is really looking at the academic environment we're in. Okay, I would say that coming back into an environment like last year, after 15 months of not being in structured school, we needed to get back to structure, right? Our purpose is one sole purpose, which is to educate, right, to provide that academic instruction, that rigor, and to have our students walk away as lifelong learners and be prepared for those next steps in those 4 years. And I think we've taken a great step and a great leap this year in making that happen, but obviously we got to come back and do some structural things to make that in a way that we want it. So some of it is attendance, all right? As I mentioned before, attendance was really somewhat of an optional thing to the start of last year. Again, why? Because all the COVID that was still going on, families still were not sending their students to school. We had gone 15 weeks where students were on Zoom meetings and they were in blacked out Zooms and asynchronous versus synchronous learning. So last year it felt like we had a hard time getting our hand on the expectations of kids being in the classroom. Now this year, our attendance policies, what that looks like, and I'll talk a little bit about that later, has really got back to that structure that attendance matters. There's nobody who would deny the correlation between being present and being in class and academic success that we have. So that's why we put so much energy into that. A lot of the other things that we're doing is just that instructional practice that we have, the engagement we want in our classrooms. We want the rigor, we want the engagement, we want kids walking out of their classes feeling as if they are connected with the material, they want to learn more, right? They want to continue to grow and continue to push themselves, right? Beyond that year into other classes, and especially in the honors, advanced, and other courses that we provide here at the school. We continue to look at instructional strategies. The reality is when we went back last year into a world of 3 feet distance for students in the classroom, it looked like a lot of old school teaching, right? There weren't group work, there's a lot of things that we didn't do as much, we didn't do as many labs, all because of certainly fears of safety with COVID and so forth. Now we want to get back into what really good interacting type of lessons look like within our classrooms. And then obviously making sure that we're keeping viable, consistent curriculum in front of our students every single day. So these are just some of the professional learning that we're doing with our staff, building those academic partnerships with families as well, reconnecting with families, which we're trying to get back into. Again, looking at the equity audit lens, creating that sense of belonging, those class environments that are welcoming, the differentiation of instructor based on who the student is and how we continue to enhance who we are and continue to have our students be challenged. So some of the major challenges for this year, or changes I should say, as you all know, goes back to the number one thing again. Structure. While students may say, well, we don't want as much structure, they do, right? Everyone needs structure. Everyone, is part of who we are and the world we're going to be in is to have structure, and it starts with attendance. So as you well know, we have a new attendance policy. Attendance policy states essentially, be it excused or unexcused, it doesn't matter. You can't miss more than 10 days in a given class, or you could lose credit. Now that sounds pretty harsh from just the surface of mentioning that, and I explain this to all the students in our class meetings. The reality is if you have extenuating circumstances with medical appointments, doctor's notes, therapy sessions, whatever those things are that are outside of the realm of the normalcy, those don't count against. But if you take a family vacation and you're gone for a week, those are 5 days excused, that do count. Now, does that mean that's going to penalize the student, they won't be able to pass a class? No. But what it means is you being present is important, and it could be to a point if you get closer to the end of the year where you've missed too many days, we may have to have you come and do some buyback. And that buyback will look at like after school or maybe a Saturday school where you come in and be able to make that up. And the reason for all that is, again, to keep the consistency we know of being in class and how important that happens to be. If you have extenuating circumstances, if you're really worried about something specific, reach to your counselor, reach to your admin, reach out to me. We'll work through it with you. But it is something our students know about how attendance is important. The other part about attendance, and students don't like to hear this a lot, is attendance also relates to tardies, right? 3 tardies actually equal an absence within a class period. And we've been very giving grace the first, especially for freshmen, as they've had to navigate how to get around the building the first few weeks. But at some point, the ability to get from class A to class B in a timely manner is important, right? And we want that to be a part of the structure we put in as well. The other areas, as you well know, is the cell phones. Again, think about the environment we came from. Students were doing laptops, Zoom meetings, and who knows what they were multitasking with in that time period with a cell phone next to them or a game or who knows what. And that's just a world we endured for a while. Now we're back to structure. Now we're back to a classroom environment where I don't believe there's a such thing as multitasking. I don't think you can do 2 things at one time. That's my personal opinion. I think when you're in class, the goal is for instruction, right? And while there's exceptions to the phones for interpretation and other things, I've been so pleasantly surprised because I know we came into last year and we saw a lot of that 15 months worth of, I'll call it a bit of addiction to cell phones that we see young people have and maybe even adults. But then getting a chance to see how we get back to saying we got to have work and we got to have play, right? We got to have the time where we're in the class, purposeful instruction, meaningful instruction. We got to be engaged, and that means you have to be off the phones. And I've been so pleased. You always have a honeymoon when you start a school year because the first few days are always great, but it's been that way throughout. And you don't go into a classroom at Albemarle High School now and see phones popping up left and right. You see structure, you see the environment of learning, and you know what? One of my teachers said, Mr. Bonham, it's so awesome, even in homeroom, some of my kids are actually reading in homeroom, right, rather than being attached to the phones because they're deciding to do that, which sounds kind of a silly thing, but it's about renorming expectations of where we are and what it means for a school and how do we continue to hang on to that as we move forward. We talked about attendance. Deadlines are important, again, because I think we learned from the pandemic. We gave grace because we knew kids were dealing with a lot of things. Some students, I talk about Maslow's, where it was life and it was work, and that was taking priority over school for them, perhaps. And so we gave a lot of deadlines through those 15 months of not necessarily having to turn things in right away. And what it felt like really was that over the course of a semester, students were deciding, sometimes last minute, to get all their things in. And what we realized from that was that's not a good practice, right? Having structure, having deadlines, having time periods for turning stuff in is really how the world works. So we want to make sure we're mimicking that. It used to be that case back in the day. So let's get back to that process where making sure we understand when things are due, and all of our classes have a systematic process for making sure they know about deadlines and so forth moving forward. So I think those are key pieces that have created really great structure for the year. I think instruction is critical. We have a great staff here, but we continue to make sure we're working together collaboratively to create engaging environments for our students, but also to push them, to challenge them, right? We want to be these warm demanders where we're getting into the point where maybe they're a little uncomfortable with some of this material in terms of like that. I don't think I wanted to do an honors or an AP class, but pushing them to the point where they know they can do it, give them the resources to make that happen for them, and prepare them for obviously life after high school. And that gets to the engagement part as well. So some of the student support pieces that we have built in place, and these are important as we continue through the course of the year. Obviously, you know probably enough about Patriot Period. It just kicked in. We did homerooms for the first week or so. Now, while they still go to a homeroom, Patriot Period is when they get a chance to get drafted into a class of their choosing, or a teacher may choose to draft them in that 40-minute block when they first get to school. That's a great great opportunity for them to do catch-up work, to make up a test, or to get a chance to do some additional work within a class that maybe they need support, or to do enrichment. We will start with clubs, club fair next week. We'll have probably close to 100 clubs and opportunities for kids to be involved in those kinds of things. We have here tutoring opportunities here. We've created additional ESOL support teams, and we have things like Madison House tutoring for the academic side. Our counseling services, I still always talk about what I equated to the iceberg after the pandemic. I think when everyone was virtual, you saw the iceberg with students. You had no idea what was underneath the water in terms of issues they were dealing with. Once they got back into school, we realized that once the water started to decline a little bit, that we had a lot of students with a lot of things that they were working through. So how do we continue to provide social, emotional, mental health support, academic support through the counseling offices that we have here? We've added some additional layers of support there. We've added social worker into our mix. We've got some social emotional learning counselors that are added in, again, to continue to provide support for our students beyond just the academics. We have many mentoring programs and other small group supports as well. So if you get to a point where your child is stuck in a rut, maybe needs some encouragement, maybe just needs an outreach component or partner, please reach out starting to your school counselor to learn more about that. How do you communicate with us? I try to be very communicative to you as principal. I do the weekly connects. No one else does those. I put those out every Sunday. Hopefully he has enough information for you, at least to get a start of the week and dates and so forth. But there are other things that we're continuing to improve. We are putting forth, and there's a little technicality to it, daily announcements, because I know once you get to high school, you don't really know a whole lot of what's going on with your child sometimes in the school. So the daily announcements that will be read over the PA will be listed as part of on the webpage for you to subscribe to, and you can get those fed into your email system. Talking points is a huge feature that we've added here at Albemarle High School the last couple of years. I know it maybe to some feel a little annoying. You're getting maybe some text messages. You can always decline those if you want, not receive them, but I think it's a great communication tool for our staff to reach out to you as parents. A lot of it's good stuff, right? It's not always bad stuff, but it's also a way to make sure we're reaching out. And then obviously the most important thing is we are open to support your child. We want you to communicate with us. Even if you feel like the issue is super small and minuscule, we want to make sure we're there to support you. And I know it's a big school, got a lot of students, but we have a lot of support. We have administrators, counselors, teachers, others to make that happen for you. So, I won't go through this. You've seen this before. This is all the different people that are able to support you. Calendars I put out. And so the last thing I'll tell you before I let you kind of start your rotation is, this has been an amazing start, as I mentioned, and I know it's a marathon, right? We've got a long ways to go, but I want to make sure that you know that you've got people in this building that love and care for your children each and every day. And our goal is to make sure each one of your children have a connecting point to an adult here. Hopefully have multiple, that they have a go-to person that will always be in their corner, that they can reach out to for all the great things, and sometimes when things aren't so great, because high school is rough. High school's a tough time. It can be a difficult 4 years sometimes with the roller coaster that's there. But our goal is to care for your children while they're here, to take care of them while obviously they're at school, but also to challenge them in a way that gets them, when they're done in 4 years, to prosper and grow and take these experiences away that will really be the foundation for them in years to come. So I will stay around here and answer any questions that you may have independently. I don't want to take you away from your rotation of your time with the parents, or the teachers, I should say, this evening. Thank you for coming tonight. I hope to get a chance to meet more of you down the road, and I hope you get a chance to experience a little bit what your students are experiencing with your teachers this evening. All right, so thank you so much.